My hands stable, I feel able to turn the tables, I could do this. Just keep moving, keep your hands up, stupid. I feel lucid, a new viewing. I can see the end, I can see my future, I can view it. It's right there for the taking. Everything I've ever wanted, dreams are just waiting. I just gotta fight for it, willing to die for it, willing to like sort of.
Hey, greetings from the year 3000, it still sucks. This is Phil J. Price, and you're listening to the Drunken Turkey Show, your one-stop for this sort of thing. Hit that button, like and subscribe. You know what to do, just like every other podcast.
Just like every other podcast. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Drunk Turkey Show. Today we had some documents dropped referencing Bryan Kohberger's alibi, or lack thereof, shall I say. 10-page document dropped. Let's go through it. And this is why it's important to get this type of information, especially before the defense gets all of the information from the prosecution, because you're going to be able to tell if this dude is lying or not. And I think he's already stepped into it right off the bat. You know, I kind of went through this, looked at some mapping that we've done in the past. I think Mr. Kohberger may have already stepped in some doo-doo. But let's look into this. Let's break it down. Let's do it. So this is the notice of defendant supplement response to state's alibi demand. Now comes Bryan Kohberger through his attorney and hereby files supplement response to demand for alibi in compliance with Idaho code. Kohberger moved to Pullman, Washington in June of 2022. So now we know exactly when it was that he moved there. As an avid runner and hiker, he'd explore many areas of the Palouse. Okay. Of note, he explored Hawaii, I hope I said that right, Park in July of 2022. And this became his favorite location. After the school year began, Mr. Kohberger was busy with classes and worked at Washington State University, and his running and hiking decreased, but did not stop. Instead, his nighttime drives increased. So the closer he got to the incident, his nighttime drives would increase. I wonder if those drives continued after November 14th, because from what we understand, he never visited Moscow, Idaho again after that November 13th morning at 9:30 a.m. Right? You know, he was constantly going out there. He went out there at least 12 times as of recent, and yet stops going altogether. Interesting coincidence. Now let's continue this. It states here, this is supported by data from Mr. Kohberger's phone showing him in the countryside late at night or in the early morning, sorry about that, or in the early morning on several occasions. The phone data includes numerous of photographs taken on several different late evenings and early mornings, including in November, depicting the night sky. So he's saying that basically he would have his phone on during these occasions. So is it going to be weird if they go into his phone, which the defense has already stated that they are, that the prosecution and law enforcement already have? Is it going to be weird when they go in there and it shows that he purposefully turned it off? Because the connections to the towers, all that tells us is that he disconnected from the network. Don't tell us why. But his phone will. I mean, his phone will say why it turned off if he put it in airplane mode or if it was manually turned off. Fortunately for us nowadays, and with technology, we just can't pull the battery out of the back, right? So, you know, if that were to have been the case, then it could have been a number of things. But if he didn't let it die out, or, you know, he purposefully turned it off, that's going to be a big issue. Now, it appears that he's had it on at other times. Why that specific night is it off? And the other thing is, if there are pictures, which obviously there could be, of the sky in November, and if they can go back and find that his phone was connected to the network while he was taking those pictures, and or if there's a tag that puts him there, that makes you wonder, well, why did he not get this information? I'm sorry, hold on. Got a message on my phone there. If he did this on those times and the phone was on and they can get those data, why only on this specific night does it not, right? So yeah, he says he goes out there, he takes pictures, he's taking photographs. All right, let's continue. Mr. Kohberger was out driving in the early morning hours of November 13th, 2022. And you see right here, it says here that on several different late evenings and early mornings, including in November, but it doesn't specify November 13th, right? He didn't take any pictures that night. There was all the other times he went out driving around, he took pictures, and there was data that included, like they mentioned, numerous photographs at several different late evenings and early mornings, but except for November 13th. Now, I'd be more, I'd find this to be less suspicious, or I'd be more on the side of Kohberger if there was a something stated to the effect like, and during these occasions, his phone went in and out of service numerous at times. Doesn't say that though. Interesting. Mr. Kohberger was out driving in the early morning hours, November 13th, as he often did to hike and run or see the moon and stars. He drove through the area south of Pullman, Washington, west of Moscow, including Waukee Park. So he's saying that's where he was at. So there is partial. This is partial, only a little bit of corroboration here. It says here, Mr. Kohberger intends to offer testimony of SI Ray, SLI expert, cell tower, cell phone, and other radio frequencies, circular something, to show that Bryan Kohberger's mobile device was south of Pullman, Washington, and west of Moscow. We already know that. When his phone was on, that's where it was. What we want to know is where it was while it was off, while it wasn't connected to a network. That is where we want to know where that phone was. It says on Idaho, November 13th, that Bryan Kohberger's mobile device did not travel east on the Moscow-Pullman Highway in the early morning hours of November 13th, and thus could not be the vehicle captured on video along the Moscow-Pullman Highway near Floyd Cannabis Shop. So now we know that there is a video of a white Elantra, or a vehicle that looks like, or they believe to be, the white Elantra. And according to Bryan Kohberger's defense team, they're not saying that that is not the killer. They're saying that that is not Bryan Kohberger. So that tells me that they're probably following that Elantra coming in to Pullman, into Moscow, and they have that white Elantra and they have it driving around everywhere. So that's why he's saying that he's west of Pullman, because they have that vehicle coming in to Moscow from Pullman, and they have every turn that vehicle made leading up to the point where it gets to that house on King Road. That's what that tells me. They're saying they're not disagreeing that vehicle traveling into Moscow is not the killer. They're saying he is not the one in that vehicle. Well, let's look at some maps here in a minute and some cameras that are pointing in a certain direction, because as soon as I read this, I was like, my man, there's video of you at 2:00 in the morning traveling south through Pullman right before you turn off your phone. Now, they have corroborated that is you because you're on video and your phone is moving. Right. So they have corroborated that information up to the point where you turned off your phone. And so they have that video traveling south towards SR 270. And then it states there that they assume he heads towards Moscow, which this Floyd Cannabis would be en route. Right. So if that ends up being the case, and he would have traveled to the park instead, well, unfortunately for him, he would have had to have gone through the intersections where they have him on camera coming back into Pullman. And I'll pull these up. Basically, what I'm saying is he's saying that he went a different direction, but that direction that he went into is the same direction that have cameras that capture him coming back in, that have corroborated him coming back in. And so if he really did go that direction, he would have shown up on those cameras. Right. And so since this isn't saying that Kohberger turned that direction and he showed up on camera going that direction, because we know there's cameras there, because those are the same cameras that captured Kohberger coming into Pullman. It would have been the same ones. In fact, let's pull it up real quick. All right, so give me a sec. Here it is. So right here, this is South Nevada Street, and this is how you would get to the Hawaii County Park. Now, we know from the probable cause affidavit that he was seen traveling southbound, and he was on several different cameras, and his phone turned off, and he was seen over here about Nevada Street. So to get to that park place through Nevada Street, it requires you to travel down this direction. So if you continue, this is what's leading to 270, and this is the road that that Moscow Police Department and law enforcement believe that Bryan Kohberger traveled. Now, in order for him to have gone towards that park instead and not go towards Moscow, he would have had to have turned here. All right. So this is the direction he would have had to have come. Unfortunately for Mr. Kohberger, there's cameras right here on Johnson Road that captured him coming in this direction in the early morning hours. And then there's a camera right here at this intersection that also would have captured him. So he would have had to have turned this way towards Johnson. And, well, here it is, guys. I mean, you got, hold on, this is the wrong one. Give me a second. Come on, reset to north. I see the Johnson Boulevard right here. Here it is. He would have had to have turned this direction. And man, where the hell am I at? I found it earlier. Give me a second, guys. There's a camera that is pointing at him here, here, and here. Let me find it real quick. Because this is the one that gets him coming into on Johnson Avenue. There's a camera somewhere around here. And then it picks him up again on Bishop Boulevard. There it is. That's the street I'm looking for. Bishop Boulevard. Right here. Oh, it's that one. My bad. That's why. Was it this one or this one? Man, I'm confused, guys. I apologize. I had this all up here a minute ago, and I marked it with a freaking... There it is. My bad. I'm at the wrong damn place. All right. So my mistake, guys. Here we are. So here is Nevada Street, and here's that first turn that I was talking about. I was way off. So Nevada Street, first turn. Nevada Street, first turn. If we put ourselves right there on that first turn, you got cameras here, here, and here. So he would have had to have gone this direction to head towards Moscow, Idaho, or turn this direction to head towards Hawaii Park. So it would have been pretty clear if he turned this direction or if he headed this way. If he headed straight in this direction and then is seen, all right, so right here. All right, so here's the camera. This is SR 270 that heads towards Moscow. This would be the road that he would have had to have taken to headed towards Hawaii Park. On this road here, there is a store that captures a white Elantra called Floyd Cannabis. It is on the SR 270. So if that vehicle that they spotted heading southbound, that they have corroborated with your phone ping, right? If they can corroborate that with your phone ping and see that you headed in this direction, and they see a vehicle matching your vehicle traveling on that roadway, which, you know, what's the likelihood there's another white Elantra right here? And how did they get here? Like, which roadway did they go that they didn't get seen on camera as well? right? So if when he's seen here at 250 something, if this is about like 8 minutes to 12 minutes later, that's the same vehicle, y'all. You get what I'm saying? So this is why you want to know where this person claims he was at or which direction he claims he went to, because you're going to be able to figure out if he's lying or not. And so far, just by looking at this alone, there should be evidence that puts him somewhere else. And we know that right here, because this is the road that he travels to get back to the Steptoe Apartments. Right, he ends up traveling up this road right here, and then he hits Bishop. That's where he's on camera somewhere else. I'm assuming there's a camera right here on this business here, or one of these businesses, maybe even that one that captured him, because he's captured at 5:26 a.m. at 1300 North Boulevard, and then they follow him up all the way down this direction, back up all the way back to the Steptoe Apartments. Right, those are the same cameras that they picked up to find him at 5:26 a.m. that he would have had to have passed by to head over to that park, the Waiwai Park. Now, let's go back to what they claim in this partial corroboration, because that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm seeing here, right? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but and I think there's another way they could have gone, but the cameras show it traveling southbound towards 270 towards Moscow. There's only one turn he could have made, and there's a camera there. And I'm interested to know if he actually went that direction or not. Because if he didn't, and they show him going that direction, and then there's a video of that vehicle traveling on 270 in front of this cannabis dispensary around the time that you would have expected that vehicle to have traveled after it had left Pullman, and you have nothing going the other way towards Waukee, whether you see a white vehicle or any of those things, that's going to be an issue. That's going to be an issue. Not to mention, when his phone came back on, he wasn't west of Pullman. He was south of Moscow, right? He wasn't west of Pullman. So how did he get back here? How did he get from there all the way to this location right here? You know, there's only one roadway that could have possibly gotten him there. It doesn't show it, but you'd have to come down this direction here and follow this blue road. And then from here to here, it does connect through some roadways. And then that would put you in Johnson, Washington, where he was an hour or so later again. Is that what he's saying? Like, how did he go from here to here? And then that's when he turns his phone on and then travel in a big old loop around. Makes 0 sense. 0 cents. This is why this alibi is probably worse than if he would have just shut his mouth. But this is the good reason why they have these things. This is why they ask you where you were. Which way did you go? Because, you know, if you say you went one way and we can prove, and I mean, I can show you where the cameras are. I can show you in the probable cause affidavit where they say those cameras are that captured him at 5 a.m. They would have captured him at 2 o'clock in the morning too. So it's right here, 5 a.m. white sedan consistent, or 525 with suspect vehicle is observed on 5 cameras in Pullman and on the campus. First camera recorded was on 1300 Johnson Road. And then it says here the white sedan was observed turning north on Bishop Boulevard, northwest 270 at approximately 527. And then it talks about it going towards Stadium Way and Nevada Street, which is where he was earlier when his phone went off. So all those places have cameras, and we can see all those places. Let's go back to this, because we haven't even gotten into like the meats and potato of this thing. Translucent says, I'm confused. All they need to do is check the other cameras in, so we don't need to wait for them to check those. I agree, but supposedly they can't. The defense, they need to know more about what the prosecution has before they can tell them more details. And they'll go through that again. It says here, Additional information as to Kohberger's whereabouts as early morning hours progressed, including additional analysis by Mr. Ray, will provide once the state lab provides discovery requested and now subject to upcoming motion to compel. So they don't know. They have no idea. They need to wait for that to come in so that they can come up with something. Why do you need somebody's information to say where you were at? If you're innocent and you can say that you were somewhere else and somebody can prove you were somewhere else, just like this, he said he went to this park. It'd be real easy to go and look at the same cameras that they have footage of already. Go check those cameras to see if he went in that direction. And if he did go in that direction, he would have been out of jail a long time ago. Right? Additional information as to Kohberger's whereabouts. All right, let me continue this. If not disclosed, Mr. Ray's testimony was also revealed that critical exculpatory evidence further corroborating Mr. Kohberger's alibi. So if they don't give them the information that they have, then there could be critical exculpatory evidence. That makes zero sense. Zero sense. The only way that you're going to get exculpatory evidence out of it is if you somehow get all of the information, which you're already doing a really bad job about the direction in which he traveled in. All right. You're already doing a really bad job there, but let's just say you do get it. Then what? I mean, I think you guys are kind of toast. Sorry. And that's pretty much it. You know, the rest of this is, experience and who's going to be called up, I guess, in their training or whatever the case may be. Not impressed with the alibi, y'all. Not impressed whatsoever. I mean, you have this guy admitting that he goes out places with, on long drives. However, he's taking photos. He has documentation of where he was on those other nights, except for the night and the following, morning or the following afternoon. Those are the two times that his phone turned off. Couldn't turn on. And if we go back to the map, if he's over here, I mean, first and foremost, like, what happened? Why did your phone go off in the middle of town? You can't tell me that his phone went off in the middle of town because he lost service or service is spotty. Because, where it went out, and for him to have traveled the distance or the direction that he traveled, he would have had to have gone through Pullman. I mean, he's already on the east side, on the far east side of Pullman. So if he would have traveled to that park, he would have traveled westbound through Pullman. And you're mean to tell me that where signal strength is the strongest is where he's going to lose it? Right. And also, he's the only one that's having issues there. Nobody else is coming forward saying, hey, you know what, that night or whatever the case may be, I had service issues. Verizon, AT&T, any of those phone networks coming up saying, nah, we had a disruption that night and there was loss of service throughout that entire area. I don't think so. For those that live in the area, go check your emails. Typically you get one saying, hey, we had a loss of coverage, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. So I don't know how people are going to spin this in a positive light for Kohberger, outside that he said that he was over there. And so they're just going to believe him. You know what I'm saying? I don't know how you can spin this. I mean, if you look at the map and you look at where the cameras are located and you're looking at time frame, right? You're looking at how long is it going to take him to get from one area to another? And is he on camera at that time, within that time frame? And if he is, and there's no other vehicle on any other camera through Pullman, because like I said, in order to go this direction or go back, he would have had to have traveled through Pullman, at least partially, and nobody else caught him going that direction. That's just wild to me. So I know he's innocent until proven guilty, and I'm not gonna go out there and say, you guys, give him the death chamber or whatever you want to call it. Not yet, but I think the walls are closing in on Mr. Kohberger now. They definitely are. yeah, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Appreciate that. Sissy coming in with her 14th month membership. Thank you so much. Says, I love the Drunk Turkey Show. Thank you, Sissy. We appreciate you and we love you back. You guys would consider being a member. I had a family medical emergency here recently, so I haven't been doing the member lives, but my grandfather is doing much better, and I'll be getting back on the horse with those, so to speak. Let's see. I'll go through some of these comments. Yeah. The Wahi Wahi State Park closes at dusk, and there's a gate entrance. How did he get in? That's the other thing. And I looked at that too. You know, I actually looked at that, and I meant to go and look at some of the at the hours and stuff like that. And I was going to look if I saw that there was a gate, but I wasn't sure if they closed it. But that's good to know. Hey, look, there's a car parked out here, all random. But yeah, I was looking at the at this area. I wish I would have marked it where it was, because there is a gate somewhere around here. I just don't recall where it was. But yeah, no, that's interesting. That's good to know. Exactly what I was thinking. This is ridiculous. I would have said this from the time I was arrested. Yeah, I mean, why not? Why not say where you were at? There would be proof. There would be evidence. I mean, even if it was like, all right, hey, I drove west from this area, and there's no cameras that capture anything over there. You know, I get it. I mean, I highly doubt that that's possible given today's, technology and stuff. I mean, they basically caught the guy leaving Pullman, caught him on the road to Moscow, and I can assure you they probably caught that vehicle going into Moscow. And again, when you look at it, they're not arguing that the vehicle passing in front of Floyd's cannabis company is not the killer. They're just arguing that that's not Bryan Kohberger, which tells me, like I said before, of those that missed it, is they don't want to put Bryan Kohberger in that car that passed by Floyd's dispensary. And if they have that car going into Moscow at Floyd's dispensary, that means they have that car going everywhere, and they have been able to track it everywhere with CCTV footage throughout the city of Moscow. And they know that that's his car, or that's the person who committed that crime. So that's why he's trying to put himself on the other side, west, about 10 miles instead. Says he went towards Moscow. We know that because his phone turns on at one point, and it's south of Moscow, but he didn't go into Moscow is what he's claiming. Again, the reason why he would claim that he's not one of the White Elantras or the White Elantra, and I say one of the, because that would be your defense, right? If you said that I did drive through Moscow, but I wasn't the only White Elantra on the road, right? That'd be one thing. But I'm pretty sure that they've been able to piece everything together, and they got this White Elantra coming in from Floyd's all the way through Moscow to the point where it gets to the 700 block of Indian Hills Drive at 3:26 a.m. And then they see it darting over to King Road residence and passing by 3 or 4 times before the person gets off and commits the murders. So this is not good for Bryan Kohberger. I don't know how, they're going to spin it in his light. I'm sure we'll figure that out pretty soon. But yeah, I mean, everything in this document, from the point where he's taking pictures, even including in the month of November, but not that night. Because you know what? If he had a picture of some of the sky that night, there would be a geotag of where that picture was taken, and he wouldn't have been connected to the network. Let's just say he was out in the wilderness and he was out of service, but his phone would have been on taking the picture. I wonder if his GPS would have been able to have captured him of where he was at. So, those are the things that make me say, all right, so all the other times you went out, you had your phone on the entire time. You're taking pictures on those other trips, but not this night, not on November 13th. Why is that? Why didn't you take pictures of what you were doing like you did on the other ones? Got something to hide? I think so. But yeah, at the end of the day, What this also tells me is that for those that think that, whoever committed this crime, was a fraternity person or a heartbroken boyfriend or any of those things, that eliminates that across the board, because they have the vehicle going into Moscow and they have it traced all the way around, not coming from Jack DeCour's house. It's not coming from Sigma Chi. It's not coming from any of those places. It's coming from the direction of Pullman, Washington, into Moscow at probably about 3:00 in the morning. Let's see. Oh, okay. Is this really how it's pronounced? Why? If that is, I'm butchering it. I'm pretty sure I am. Thank you. Appreciate that. Is this where he hit everything in the river? See, here's the thing, though. That's what I wondered, too, because this is Snake River. Now, what we do know is that he ended up going out here to Clarkston, and he was somewhere around the Snake River when he the day after the murders that evening or that afternoon. And there's a lot of speculation that he may have discarded something into the river. So he was at two different points of the river, according to him. Now, I don't know this area well enough. We just got his information, but I'm going to go through on the Google Earth, through the streets and stuff, see if there's anything that maybe has a camera or anything like that would be facing the street that can be found. I just think it's crazy, though, more than anything, that they're saying that we can give you more details, but not until after we get all the other information. It's just wild to me. It's just wild. Let's see. I think BK is on this. I think there's more to the story. Thank you, Maury, for your $4.99 super chat. Appreciate that. Your super sticker. Thank you so much. Thank you. Answer a few questions, and then I'll probably be calling it a show here pretty soon. How do I explain the DNA? Which DNA? The one that's on the sheath, that's his underneath the body inside of a brass sheath button? Well, if it's inside of a brass sheath button, that means that, and they were able to collect it, and they were able to find a profile because brass degrades DNA samples quicker. That means that sample must have been put on there relatively early, or not that far from when it was picked up, right? Because if that DNA sample was transferred on there the day before, 2 days earlier, probably would have degraded and you wouldn't have had that sample there. So the fact that they were able to get that sample tells me that it was a fresh sample. Now, if it was a fresh sample, I'm kind of curious as to where his DNA came from. If he was driving around by himself at night alone and nobody else around him, where somebody else would have gotten his DNA. Also, if he's innocent, he's likely the wearing the gloves and all that other stuff is probably a common thing. It's not something that just happened November 13th, unless he killed somebody, then we can see him wearing gloves all the time. But if he didn't do it, then we would have think that would have been a habit that was prior to that. We know that he was doing it shortly afterwards because there's apparently video of him at Albertson or some other places with gloves on. Now, we also know that police attempted to pull his DNA at a house that he was at for a few weeks, which was his parents' house in Albert, Pennsylvania. And they were unable to get his DNA. He's wearing gloves. He's not leaving DNA behind, even when you're looking for it. So what are the odds that his DNA somehow ends up inside of the button of a sheath? Now, if it's transferred, then it was picked up from somewhere and then put in there. But it's single source. So whoever picked it up only picked up his and didn't leave their own. That's questionable. That's really questionable. So in my opinion, I think that's huge. Also, we also have to remember where it was located. It was located inside of the button snap, face down, I believe is what the probable cause affidavit or one of the affidavits had stated. Well, we know the other side is leather. Leather is waterproof. So because it was face down, and even though there may have been blood or this or that, it protected that sample inside that sheath. It's very fortunate that all those things occurred for that sample to be available. I'm sure there was probably a lot more DNA on that sheath. I don't think he intended on leaving it behind, but it was probably mixed in with the amount of blood and stuff that was left on the scene that wasn't protected by being face down and having a leather backing behind it. I hope all that makes sense. And if you're referring to the DNA in the car, that one's questionable. I mean, I've said it from the beginning. I said it was going to be a big hurdle if nothing came back. Now, I've had a professional forensic person come on the show. She had a master's degree in forensics. She was a forensic medical death investigator, and she was explaining that there are cleaners that can clean up blood and stuff, and if you don't test it right away, like within a few days, all that stuff dissipates and there's no evidence of it. And so he had 7 weeks, and he also had probably access to a lot of things, given his position at WSU in criminology. There was a case, Christopher Porco. He drove 3 hours, killed his father with an axe. He stood over his dad and hit him with an axe and got blood all over the place. Then he hit his mother with the axe too. She didn't die, but she ended up surviving. There was no evidence of a cleanup, no evidence of anybody taking a shower, any of those things. And he got in his Jeep, took off, drove 3 hours back to where his college dorm was. And they never found any blood or anything in his car. Now, the reason they thought that he was able to accomplish that was that he worked at a veterinarian hospital, and there they perform surgeries on animals, and he had privilege to clothing to protect, nurses and the vet techs and the doctor from blood and guts and things of that nature. And so they suspected that's how he was able to get in there and commit the crime. What DNA they did find was, from what I understand, he paid a tab, or not a tab, one of those tolls. He paid a toll, and they got his DNA on the ticket of the toll, and they got a picture of his vehicle and the whole 9 yards. So yeah, those things happen. I mean, just because it's unlikely or uncommon, you got to remember who we're dealing with. We're dealing with somebody who's very intelligent, somebody who's studied in the field quite a bit. You're looking at somebody who, well, let's look at the crime itself as well. You had 4 people whose lives were taken by a knife. So in close combat or in close proximity. All right. The only DNA that was left by the perpetrator, assumably, is the DNA left on the sheath. If we took the sheath out of it, no DNA was left behind. Now, I ask a lot of people, if you had somebody in a knife fight, where would you more likely think you'd find that person, both people's DNA in those type of situations, versus, in a car where the guy had 7 weeks to clean it? He didn't have that much time to clean up the scene. He didn't have enough time to clean up the scene. If we go by what, Dylan states of the direction and the time in which the vehicle left. And then you also have cameras of that said vehicle traveling on Wilenta Drive at 419. So he only had a specific amount of time. No DNA was left behind. If somebody went to that preparation to not leave their own DNA behind, not a hair, not sweat, saliva, nothing. I don't understand why people were so surprised that he was able to clean or protect his vehicle if need be. And not to mention, what kind of person could commit a crime like that? Could commit a crime where they don't leave DNA behind after killing 4 people? Is this a person that's love struck, upset because their girlfriend left them? Is this a person who's roid raging, and drunk? And there's a group of them. You think a group of drunk kids are going to go into a place and not leave any DNA whatsoever? And then we also have to think that none of these individuals have feelings or anything, because we're to believe there's like 5 or 6 of them, right? And all of them are just callous and couldn't care. I don't think so. Those are all just story made movie stuff that don't exist. Doesn't exist. Let's see. I do follow creators that heavily support innocent until proven guilty because I'm fascinated with the defense argument for him. I don't understand what the defense argument is for him. I mean, he's saying that he was out driving around by himself that night, and he can't explain his DNA in the knife sheath. Can't explain right now why his phone was off. At least we haven't gotten an explanation for it. You know, what about the knife that he purchased on Amazon that's missing? Where's that at? Where's the sheath that belonged to said knife that they got on Amazon? Crazy stuff, guys. Crazy stuff. Crazy stuff. Yes, please. Thank you, Trixie, for coming in. Thank you, all our mods and members and everybody tuning in. We appreciate all you guys. So if you have a question, please use the stars in front of it before so I can see it, because I'm going to scroll through these and not read them too quickly. It's a half truth. You take what is given. He's on camera coming from that direction, so you most with what you got. Camera failed, missed, etc. on his way in. Yeah, True Steve from True Crime Web. Thank you so much. But yeah, I think they got him, man. I think they got him with all these cameras. There's cameras that have been established that we already know that have picked him up at a certain time. In order for him to have traveled to Wa'iwa'i Park, there would have been cameras picking him up, going to that direction. He would have had to have traveled through Pullman, Washington, regardless of anything. And there's cameras everywhere. Why didn't any of them pick him up? And if they did, don't you think that Ann Taylor would be jumping and screaming, I believe in his innocence, because he's driving here at this time, heading towards this direction that he says he was going to? I don't think so. Don't think so whatsoever. Do you think his car is a built-in GPS? I don't. I know a lot of people were talking about this black box and stuff like that. I looked into it, guys. The black box is very similar to like, you know how when I tell you guys about body cams that they're constantly recording, but as soon as you hit the record button, it doesn't start saving. And the moment that it saves is when you hit the record button, it starts saving 2 minutes prior, right? So it saves 2 minutes, but if you don't hit record, it gets deleted after 2 minutes. It's the same thing with these car black boxes. It's constantly recording when it's in motion or whatever. But the moment it establishes that it was in a collision is when it hits the record button. And it only records from that moment on. So if he was driving around that night and they looked at it, there's no way to tell where he was at. Let's see. Oh, what was that? I'm sorry. I wanted to be familiar with an area at night, 100%. Yeah, that's exactly what I think. I mean, and that's the reason why he also had his phone on, right? I mean, you turn your phone on because you don't know where you're at. You're driving around, you don't know where you're going. You know, you take some pictures and do this and that just to kind of prove that you're doing something in case you get in this situation, right? But, you know, you eventually, you had to have started somewhere. Now we know when, June 22nd, and we know that the closer he got to the date that the murders happened, the more frequent he started to go out and drive. How coincidental is that? You know, he's practicing his route. He was getting ready. When he thought he was ready and when he knew he could do it, that's when he did it. Let's see. And I know a lot of newer cars have them. I think his was a 2015. It was the base model too. You can tell by the infotainment center. So I highly doubt it had a lot of the bells and whistles that would have given him some sort of GPS location. I believe they did recover dog hair. I just don't know what the results was of that dog hair. If it ended up coming back as Murphy's hair, then that would be a pretty solid nail in that coffin. If you ask me, but I don't think it is. You know, I think this guy went through extensive preparation and planning. And I know a lot of people are going to say, well, if he planned and prepared these things, how could he do some of the dumb stuff he did, like take his phone or, you know, leave his knife sheath behind? And what I say is there's also a human element to this, right? You can prepare for something all you want and do the preparation. There's no pressure. There's no stress on you during those moments. If you're packing a kill kit or if you're preparing your car for you going in somewhere and coming out, there's not that added pressure as if you're actually walking through the house and attempting to commit the crime. when you look at the probable cause affidavit and you look at the Linda Lane footage and you compare those two with the together, it shows a person that after the DoorDash person left at 4 o'clock, whoever drove by there, allegedly Bryan Kohberger, to me, it looked like things got real. He drove around 3 times very smoothly, just in a circle. The DoorDash driver is gone. He stops. He pauses for 11 seconds, turns around right there in front of the Linda Lane camera, turns around and goes back the other way. PC affidavit says that he's seen trying to either park or do another 3-point turn, but can't do it in front of the house. So then he goes into the King Queen Road intersection and does a 3-point turn to turn around again, and then goes back all the way around the apartment complex to park behind the house. Like, what that tells me is there was probably a light on for that DoorDasher, and when that DoorDasher left, that light turned off, and it was go time, and stuff got real in that moment for whoever it was in that Elantra. And it don't matter how much planning or preparation you take. In those moments, adrenaline's pumping, mistakes can be made. You're human. He's not a god. I know some of you think he is, but he's not. He's a human being. He can make mistakes. He might be smart, but even smart people make dumb mistakes. So he goes in there, he commits the crime. And for him to make, this is in fact his first time, his adrenaline would be pumping through the roof, heart rate, the entire 9 yards. For him to make a mistake like that is one, it's not uncommon. BTK left a gun at one of his victims' houses, had to go back and retrieve it. So, he leaves a gun behind, he takes off. Now, somebody saw him, right? Now you have the human element again of, I want to know. Do they know? Did they call the police? Is the media aware? So he turns his phone on because he can't handle not wanting, can't handle that feeling of not knowing. Now we know that he's kind of gets that a little bit later, because when he's picked up in Pennsylvania and he waives his extradition rights and asked to go back to Idaho so quick, well, that was because he had no idea why they arrested him. Even the officer there from Pennsylvania, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, stated that to him, he felt that Mr. Kohberger was eager to get back to Idaho because he wanted to know what they had on him. That's part of the human element, wanting to know what they have. It's a common thing that happens when there's crimes. That's why people revisit the crime scene or put themselves into the crime. It's natural, right? So he gets there and he sees what they have, and then he climbs up. But for him to make the mistakes, or when he made those mistakes, is during the time you would expect mistakes to be made, especially with somebody as intelligent as he is. You wouldn't expect the mistakes to be made on the preparation aspect, and that includes preparing the car. I mean, why would he prepare everything, getting there, his clothing, the whole 9 yards, or the time, maybe perhaps a change of clothing. He prepared afterwards. He took his long trip so he wouldn't be seen traveling into Pullman right away, right? Because if he's seen traveling into Pullman right away, then boom, cops have him right real quick. So he takes this long drive out of his way because nobody would have expected him to. Right. So you go through all this planning, but you don't prepare your car. Come on now. And then afterwards, you don't figure out a way to clean it. I mean, that's like the lowest common denominator in this entire component. It's the easiest thing to do. And you expect to believe that was the part where he screwed up. Now, I understand that, like I said, the other stuff all took in the phone and the knife shoot, but that was during the most crucial and the hardest part of the crime, committing it. And that's when you expect to see mistakes, not in the other parts. I hope that makes sense. Let's see. I'm going to scroll through this real quick. I don't know who's timing anybody out. I see that, but let's just all be cool. Whether you believe he's innocent or not, it's all good. Do we think AT truly believes BK is innocent? I mean, how long did it take for him to say that? Or her to say that? I apologize. It took forever. And how could you believe in somebody's innocence if you don't know where he was at? Because there was a court hearing where the defense was trying to compel the prosecution to hand over things. I think it had to do with the IGG. And Thompson said that the FBI hasn't handed them over. They can't give them what they don't have. And then the alibi comes up, and it had already been given that he was just driving around. And I believe Thompson had asked for a more detailed alibi. And Ann Taylor in court stated on the record that they don't have anything more than what they have given to prosecutor Bill Thompson. They're in the same boat as them as far as the information that they're getting from the FBI. Bryan Kohberger has not told them anything more than he was just driving around. So I wonder when he divulged the information that he went this direction, because unless Ann Taylor was purging herself in court on the record, she didn't know that information at that moment, right? You know? So if you don't know that information at that moment and you're somebody's attorney and there's an attorney-client privilege and your client is life is on the line and he's refusing to tell you things because he's probably well aware that she can't allow him to purge himself or anything like that. He can't say certain things. So he keeps things close to the vest. Those aren't actions that are done by the innocent, by the way. Just FYI. Let's see. Maury comes in with a 9.99 super sticker. Thank you so much, Maury. We appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. Let's see. I don't see any questions yet, but throw them my way. I mean, if you think he's, there's an explanation here, if you think that, an avenue I'm not seeing, I can admit that I'm also human. So when I look at certain things, I can look at them kind of tunnel vision myself. So maybe there's something I'm not seeing out of this information. If you have something that is constructive and not just, oh, he didn't do it and somebody planted evidence on him, bring it up. I'd love to hear what your ideas and thoughts are. I'm not going to ridicule you. I'm not going to call you names or any of those things. I think we can all be an adult about this. I've had plenty of conversations with creators who don't agree with me, and we can be adults about those type of things for the most part. I know I got a little crazy the last time I was on a 5-hour live. Angel remembers it. She was watching. It was probably like maybe I think there was her and like a handful of others that were in there defending me. The rest were it was a rough one, but it was fun. It was good. It was a good time to talk with somebody of the opposite opinion and to kind of figure out what it is that they think is going on, because at the end of the day, I can look at the information that they have and kind of align it with the information that we have. And I can basically, what's the word? So far I've been able to mark off that what I'm thinking is correct based on the information, just because I can look at these things. But I'm kind of rambling. Let's continue this. Daniel, Mr. Steve was accidentally blocked. Can you remove him? Oh my God. Yeah, I can remove him. Give me a second. Sorry, Steve. It wouldn't happen again. I don't know how it happened. Let me see. Give me a sec. I got to figure out how to do it. I think it's under settings, channel. But yeah, if anybody has anything, let me know. What do you guys think? Do you guys think that he is a what do you guys think? Do you think that this was in his benefit? Do you think it wasn't in his benefit? If you're watching on the replay, this is something you're catching back. Let me know what you guys think as well. Tell me, do you think that this was more in favor of Bryan Kohberger? Do you think that this was something that leaned towards the favor of the prosecution? I, for one, thinks it leans towards the prosecution. It gives us an idea of when and where, the direction in which he traveled, which is extremely helpful because now we can pull up, images and the map of those directions he would have had to have traveled. And if that's the case, then we would have, he'd be out if he went that direction. There would be video of him going in that direction. I'm not seeing Mr. Steve in here. Oh, there you go. No, that's not it. I don't see Mr. Steve in here, y'all. I'll have to maybe do it afterwards. There was one other person who had gotten accidentally blocked one time. And I went in there and I was like, I don't see him. And then I found him afterwards. But I'm not seeing it yet. Not yet. No, I don't see it. Let me know if I Let me know if maybe I got it wrong. I know DTS is into the facts, but we all know and respect Mel. Psychic mentioned a bridge over a river beside a railroad track. Native American Reserve. Daniel just showed exactly that. Yeah. That's true. I mean, I'll be honest. I'm not really. I'm a little bit skeptical when it comes to psychics type of stuff, but that's just because I haven't met one that made me believe. Maybe one day I will. Send me that information, Angel. I've never seen that before. I'd like to see that. I'd like to know when and where you got that information, because that would be interesting. That would be interesting of when and where that information came from. Lisa says, not on the weapon sheath or on the victim. Of course, other male DNA is found somewhere in the house or outside. It was a party house. Yeah. If they're referring to the three unidentified male DNAs or whatnot, there's a problem, right? So one was, it was inside of a glove outside of the house, and it was found like in late November, right? It was not found immediately. And it's supposed to be the one that, gosh, his name escapes me, the interview room guy, McDonough. It was supposed to be the one that he found. However, the one he found was after, sometime afterwards. There was snow, it had been snowing, and the glove was on top of the snow. So had it been there since November 13th, when there was less snow on the ground, then the glove would have been buried by the snow, not sitting on top of it. So that tells me that came well after. Now, the other thing it tells me is that Ann Taylor was super descriptive about the location, where it was at, inside a glove, outside of a house, but super vague on the other two, outside of the area of where two of the bodies were. Just said area. I felt that if it was somewhere that was in arm's reach, or somewhere that was on the bed, or, on the bodies, something to that nature would say that. Why doesn't it say that? Why is it so vague? Got to ask, why are they being vague on those two samples? And then you also have to remember that it said as of December 17th that those samples were unidentified. Not that they're still unidentified, but as of December 17th. And we know from the New York Times article that they didn't even have Bryan Kohberger's identity on the knife sheath until December 19th. So obviously, even if they ran it, they wouldn't have had anybody's information at that point, regardless. So, pay attention to the words that are in there, and you guys will see that the defense is trying to, hit you with some big words, but kind of filling in the little words with stuff that, if you're just focusing in on, oh, boom, 3 male DNAs, and not really paying attention to where they were, or how they were labeled, and how they were described differently, you might fall in that trap where you're looking at the big words. You know what I mean? It's called tunnel vision too. And it's a natural thing. I've had it myself. You think law enforcement fake Bryan Kohberger's passing and he is going to be no, I don't think so. Not at all. Okay. Why are they bringing up him being at YE? He must have been seen there or pinged there, in my opinion. Yeah, well, they brought him up there, being there quite a bit. And I guess what they're saying is that because he went there in other trips, that's where he went on this night, consistent with his other trips. But those other trips also had pictures and some other things that were consistent with those trips, but not this one. Why is this one different? I wonder why. You know what I'm saying? Where is your cigar tonight? I don't know. I need one. Exactly. He is wasting our US dollars because he knows. And they set a trial date. Not yet. Not yet. Not yet. I wonder how his hands looked when they picked him up. But then again, 7 weeks is time to heal. If you go back and you watch the video of the, go watch the when he gets pulled over in Indiana. Everybody looks at his right hand and his right arm. That guy's hiding something on the back of his left hand or on the left wrist. The way he's acting, he hides it. He puts it behind him. His hand is always facing the direction of the officer. And then he puts his hand between his legs, kind of covers it, puts it underneath his chair. I mean, for one, shoot, the guy could have had a gun there, and dang officer was in there just kind of hanging out like it was like another freaking his compadre he pulled over, which was some pretty bad officer safety, I'll say that. But yeah, go look at it. He has his hand between his legs underneath the seat. I wonder if he had something there just in case they were going to try to arrest him. Probably not. I mean, he went in, from what I understand, running in his underwear with his trash, but running towards his basement, from what I heard. But I guess he didn't have a weapon with him or not. But would it have been different? I don't know. I don't know if he had one access to him right then and there. Apparently, they did pull some guns out of his house, right? They had guns in his house. They pulled them out. They picked him up. So, just kind of things that make you go, This case is similar to the Travis Jeton slaying in Oregon. Thoughts? I thought there was, but the fact that law enforcement kind of cleared that out pretty quickly tells me that they probably got an idea of who may have been involved in that. Just one of those situations with evidence or whatnot, when it comes to like cases like this, right, with Bryan Kohberger, had he not gotten caught in 7 weeks or whatever, and they wouldn't have figured out that it was him with, by the time December 19th, there would have probably been a lot of footage lost and things of that nature. And when you get a cold case and it takes a while to figure out somebody, some of that information gets lost, and that's what makes it kind of hard to prove. When you have a case like Bryan Kohberger where tapes and surveillances are just being picked up and at a rapid pace because of how early it happened, and the availability of that makes it a lot harder for somebody to get away with something. But as far as, do I think they're connected? I don't know. I don't think so. I strongly suspect that Kohberger was involved. If not, I feel positive that this was a one-man show, and I believe myself that they got the right guy. I'm not going to say he's guilty. I'm not going to say put him to the, whatever. Not yet. He has to have his day in court. You never know. Maybe there is, some sort of camera or something that captures him somewhere else, and then we'll have to cross that bridge when it comes, right? But I strongly suspect it was him, and if he wasn't anywhere near this area when that other slaying happened, then I don't think they're connected. Alibi says the alibi is nothing burger. 100%. Time to shine. Sunshine says, do you think this was his first murder? I think so. Now, the reason being is I think that he had this Reddit survey, which I understand is had to do with his thesis, and his teacher was helping him out with that. But at the same time that he was doing that survey, he was applying for the Pullman Police Department as an intern. And I'm assuming he didn't get that job because he applied again in the fall. All right. Now, that same month is also when he allegedly purchased a K-bar knife, April of 2022. And around that same time, he's getting released as a security guard, I believe. He was a security guard at the I think it's at his high school that he went to. And we found his resignation letter where it states that he understands that if he doesn't resign, that he'd be forced to terminate, or he could be terminated. So those aren't, words you'd find in a resignation letter unless you were being forced to resign. So my assumption is let's put all that together. You have him getting kicked out as a security guard officer, him applying for a intern police position, and it appears he doesn't get it because he's applying again in the fall. Right. Do you think that those two things may have had something to do with each other? Do you think that maybe perhaps during the course of his background, they find out what happened as a security guard that prevented them from choosing him at that moment? All right. And so they tell him probably something like, hey, come out here, do a semester. Maybe he came up with a fantastic story for it that they bought and said, all right, come out here, be a semester, and then apply again, and then we'll pick you up as long as everything goes well. Well, if things don't go well, right away, he's having problems with female PhD students and other female students. They're documenting his disturbing behavior. They call it a Bryan tally. They're documenting the times he's trying to ask out one of these ladies multiple times. He's forced himself between females and his door in his office, which was a violation of rules on several occasions. Those things were tallied on there, and he had a way of misconduct with his professors. In fact, he got into a physical altercation with John Snyder. These were all things that led up to his termination. Now, if he had a situation that got him, forced to be resigned or forcible resignation as a security guard, and that prevented him from being an intern police officer, do you think him losing his position as a TA or having the problems that he was having during that time in the fall while he was applying, do you think that would have made him look like a prime candidate for being a police officer? No, it wouldn't. Then you have to add in the fact that he had a history of drug abuse, right? And not to mention, we don't know it, but it's been reported that there is a theft that he was arrested for, something to do with his family members, which I think is going to play a huge toll or huge role when it comes down to this case, because I heard a little something about that little incident might come up in this situation. Well, anyways, in my opinion, those things don't point towards the direction of somebody that you want as an officer. And if he's not getting that, he's losing his TA position, which came with some financial privileges and housing privileges. He's losing all those things at the same time. So, yeah, I can see him finally losing it at that moment, all of it building up at that time. You know what I mean? I think that this was probably his first time. When you look at the way the vehicle was being operated after the DoorDash driver left, it tells me that person was new to this. There was, they got nervous. That's why they were driving in the manner that they were. Mama says, does anybody else write down different scenarios of how it could have happened? A journal. I have about 3 scenarios it could have been. Yeah, I've had a few scenarios, but they've all what's the word I'm looking at? Basically funneled them down to I got one basic theory, and so far, including the non-stalking of one victim, I felt that given what I thought or what occurred in this case, that would have been the situation. If you guys want to know what that is, check out our videos. Go to the video playlist at Bryan Kohberger, and you'll see a deal that says how I think he did it. And in there, I talk about how all these things that he would have done in efforts to elude the investigation, there were certain things that he would not have done. He would not have inserted himself into the investigation. So I didn't think he was Papa Rogers or what was the other one, One-Eyed Looking or something like that. I didn't think he was either one of those. And this was before any of that stuff came out, that it wasn't him. I put out there, he wasn't them. He wouldn't. That's a modern day way of inserting yourself into the crime. Right. And I would have thought as well, if he would have been following one of these victims, he would have gotten caught real quick. Their social medias were something that they had a warrant for a long time ago. And so if his name populated in that search warrant for that media, as far as being somebody that followed one or two of the girls, and or if there was messages that went back and forth, they would have looked at this guy, saw he drove a white Elantra, and said, hey, this guy had a white Elantra not too long ago. It was from Pennsylvania, and PA, you don't have front license plates. They would have been on him like this, and then they would have gone and pulled his DNA. They wouldn't have needed to do the IgG. They would have just pulled his DNA from the trash, and if they couldn't get his trash DNA, because remember, he's wearing gloves and stuff, then you go pull it from the parents' house. Go to his parents' house, you pull out trash, then you can get a familial DNA in the manner that you did already, and then you go pick him up and get that warrant to test his cheek, and then boom, you have your guy, and you had him under arrest. Never needed the IgG. That's kind of why I tell people the IgG is pointless. You don't need it. In this situation here, they took DNA from dad's trash. matched it up, it would have led to all the other evidence that they have anyways. So it's just pointless. They're just going in a circle, trying to stall. But yeah, I've looked at a couple of different scenarios. The one that I think happened was this guy had all those scenarios happening to him, and he decided, he wanted to, this is a throat kill. I mean, there's a camera that picks up audio 50 feet away, right? Now we know that there was a still image from 1112 King Road at 1:56 a.m. And what we know is that, or what I know is that screenshot from 1112 that's facing the King Road, Queen Road residence or intersection, that was released by Steve Goncalves. And that was released because some people had put some things in the Linda Lane audio that made it sound like something was happening at a different time. He released that because he said that he had this footage, and throughout that night, there is no sound of anything happening. So, or let me rephrase that. There's no sound of the things that are happening at 2 or 3 a.m. Now, I don't know about the sounds at 4:20. I didn't ask them. I don't want to ask them about those sounds. That's not for me to ask. And that's not for them to describe to me either. That would be highly inappropriate of me. But they have the sounds of it beforehand. So what does that also say? That means that some cat taking a piss didn't set off the camera. They were always running. So we have it constantly, right? So you have this camera that picks up barking, thud, whimpers, whispers, voices. You don't hear somebody screaming, yelling. You don't hear banging. You don't hear the sounds of somebody emotional or rage, those type of things. So you hear quiet, still, stealth. Those are all components of somebody that is committing a throat kill. So for those that want to know the motive, there it is. Now, as far as why these individuals, I honestly think that, he was trying to perpetrate a high-profile crime, get away with it. And there are some elements that are needed for a high-profile crime. One of them is going to be, the attractiveness of the victims. These victims were very attractive. You also have the number of victims that you have. The more victims you have, the likelier that you're going to have a high-profile crime. And, when you have that as your motive, right, then the things like a new car outside or Ethan's Jeep parked outside don't matter as much, because the goal is mass casualty, to create some sort of high profile crime. Now, the reason why I believe he didn't do anything with Dylan is either he didn't see her because of how dark it was in there. And I know it says she opened the door, but it doesn't say how far open the door was. And myself and, Steve from True Crime Web did a experiment, and we shared it on the show, where he was showing a mannequin walking through the night and also walking in very similar conditions to the King Road residents and what you can and can't see. And it would have been very difficult for Bryan Kohberger, after walking through, that neon sign, to have been able to see somebody cracking open a door down the hall to his left, especially if, all he knows is he heard somebody yell, right? Because that's what I think happened. I think that he was in the process of doing something, probably heard Dylan yell out something to the effect like "shut up" or something very quickly. Now, if you're tunnel vision, you're in the process of doing something, somebody yells out something, you're probably not picking up what they said. And if it's something like "shut up" and it's very quick, you're gonna know somebody said something, but you don't know what they said. And he hadn't even gone to the first floor yet. He hadn't even checked Dylan's door, so he didn't know where that voice came from. So he probably booked it out of there as fast as he could. And, if he hadn't heard that, I mean, no telling. I can't predict what he would have or wouldn't have done, but I would have speculated that he probably would have continued the destruction that he had been on. Did he continue hiking and late at night drives after 11/13? Stacy asked. I'm not sure, but I do know that he stopped going to Moscow after that. Why not admit, Angel asked, why not admit that this is the first time asked for his alibi? This is nowhere near 11/22. That's a pretty good question. That is a pretty good question. They need to see evidence before coming up with a BS alibi. 100%, Nina. 100%. Let's see. Oh man, I'm already over an hour. This was supposed to be a 45-minute show tonight. Well, I appreciate everybody that is tuned in, everybody that's like, oh, I got some start stuff. Peggy comes in with a $5 super chat. Thank you so much, Peggy. We appreciate you. I'm going to make sure I don't miss anybody else's. Jordan comes in with a membership for 9 months. Thank you, Jordan. Stacy asks, do you think his habits changed after 11/13 and they're able to prove it and use it against him? Did he continue these drives, etc.? The drives, I don't know, but the trips to Moscow did stop. Right now, does he have an excuse saying, hey, 4 people were killed in that city. I didn't feel comfortable going back over there. Maybe. But I think that some of the times that he was out there were late at night and driving around. And if he didn't return there after that, I mean, why not, right? So we do know that some of his habits did change. Also, when did the habit about the gloves happen? Now, from my understanding, the sisters, or one of the sisters, allegedly, according to a report I had seen, said something about the gloves weren't a common thing for Kohberger. When did he develop that? Did he develop it the night of November 13th? Why was it on that night that he developed this habit? Some questions that make you say, But thank you so much for your membership for 2 months. Sirius Black comes in. He's a member for 2 months as well. Angel says, with a $2 super chat, I was defending you, Daniel, and laughing. And I'm sure that's referencing to the other live that I was on. That was a good one. That was, like I said, it was something else. Sometimes it was frustrating. Sometimes it was, I learned some things, right? So let's see. True Crime Web, Mr. MSD, 100%. Make sure you go follow him. He does a lot of great work, guys. He also did the work on the footprints. Remember how we looked at that? We looked at the probable cause affidavit, and we were able to decipher that. It doesn't say that there was only one latent footprint. It says that they used one latent footprint as corroboration to what Dylan had stated, that the killer walked out at that direction. And when we looked under a black light at all the steps that Steve had taken with synthetic blood under his shoes, he stepped in blood with his booties on, and as he walked, the pattern of the sole was visible as if he didn't wear any booties. It was crazy to see that. And so what that tells me is that there was probably a lot of footprints in there. They just don't talk about all the footprints. They're just talking about that one. And why that one is important is because it's facing in one direction, right? It's facing towards the direction that they believe he left. And why they think that one was is corroborated is because it's a latent print. Latent print means you can't see it, which means that those steps had already, that means it's one of the later prints that he made. If you were able to see a print, if it was visible through from the naked eye, then that would have meant that was probably one of the earlier prints and not one of the later prints that would have been indicating that he was leaving. I hope that made sense. But yeah, guys, I appreciate everybody. I'm gonna be back on Friday, so make sure you subscribe and like and do all that stuff. Make sure you share this content with everybody. But I'm out of here, guys. Y'all have a great night. We'll see you next time.